Ladies and gentlemen, this is what you're waiting for. The July 18th faux patch is here. We are going to break this down and take a look at what we got, and we're going to be starting with new unique items and legendary aspects. Now, there are 6 new unique items, and they say these unique items can be obtained from World Tier 4, and the legendary aspects can be obtained from any world tier. Now, these new unique items have been discovered in Sanctuary, and you can also use them on the Eternal as well as the Seasonal Realm. So these are on all of the realms. They're in the game. The patch is out. You can download it for yourself. Here we go. First one, Spear of Lycander. Gain a random shrine effect for 10 to 20 seconds after killing an elite enemy. Can only occur once every 30 seconds. That is actually really cool. That seems like a generic unique. I don't see that being tied to any specific class there. That is actually really cool. Random shrine effects. Imagine just getting Conduit Shrine randomly. Okay, kind of like that. Let's see here. It also doesn't say the secondary stats, so I want to know what secondary stats, but I guess we'll have to figure that out. Barbarian gets a new one that the lucky hit your core skills have a 20% chance to freeze enemies for 3 seconds and deal code damage to them. All right. The Druid gets Debilitating Roar and Blood Howl, deal damage to nearby poison enemies. Oh, that's kind of cool because poison, I feel like the rabies poison build from the werewolf could be a little bit better, and there's ways to actually make this work now, I believe, with that. So I kind of like that. Necromancer, the Lidless Wall, unique shield, lucky hit. While you have an active Bone Storm, hitting an enemy outside of Bone Storm has a 5 to 25% chance to spawn an additional Bone Storm at their location. Each of your active sacrifice bonuses increases the chance by 25%, and the total number of additional Bone Storms you can have by +1. So you can have Bone Storms all over the place, and that's a unique shield. That is cool that there's now a unique offhand. That is something that we have not seen, at least not that I'm aware of. Like Druid doesn't have unique totems or anything, so I kind of like to see the shield that's getting one. Okay, that's interesting. I have a Necromancer, and now I kind of want that one. Let's look at the Rogue here. The Rogue gets a unique bow. Penetrating shot has a 30 to 80% chance to fire an arrow that bounces off walls and scenery. Hitting enemies from behind with penetrating shot will make them vulnerable for 3 seconds. So now you get kind of a bouncing effect, but you also get vulnerability on penetrating shot, which is great because I think the only one that had vulnerability prior was Puncture, I believe. I could be wrong about that. My Rogue's only like 54. Let's see here. The Sorcerer. The Oculus unique wand gain the effect of teleport enchantment for free. Wait, really? And when you evade using teleport enchantment, you are taken to a random location. Ooh, the randomness of that is... Yeah, I don't know how I feel about the randomness of that, but that is kind of nice that you get the your evade now teleports you. Okay, so that's kind of cool. That one, I feel like Sorcerer got the most worst one. I kind of like the other ones better than the Sorcerer one, I'm going to be honest here. The Azarath and Flesh Render unique items have flat damage effects with skill with power. For example, 820 item power Azarath deals between 3359 and 7618. Okay, so that would be the Azarath and the Flesh Renderer, which is Druid as well as Barbarian. They are flat damage amounts, scaling with item power, and 820 being one of the highest here, is at a maximum of 6,700, which is a little disappointing to see. I was kind of hoping it was a multiplier, but so be it. Let's see here. 7 new legendary aspects. Now we can go to Gemro aspects. So these are for all classes. Again, when there are at least 5 close enemies, stun them for 2 to 4 seconds. This can only occur once every 20 seconds. That's actually fairly low. And having a CC, okay, I kind of like that. It just says when they're least close, so it just automatically stuns. That's interesting. It's a utility aspect. Okay. Mobility aspect, you gain 20 to 40% increased movement speed when you're moving away from slowed or chilled enemies. I wonder how that's going to pair with things like Pintia Greaves that has chill behind you. So as you run away from people, you're just really absolutely blasting with your movement speed. That's kind of interesting. So Barbarian here has an offensive aspect that their charge now calls forth 4 Ancients who also deal charge, dealing 50 to 100% of their damage. Okay, so they add some bonuses to charge here. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm gonna look at the Druid one though. Poison Creeper's active also casts Landslide in a circle around you. Oh boy. That's going to be really good. Earth skills deal 10 to 20% increased damage to poison enemies. All right. Poison Creeper just got better. People were already sort of using Poison Creeper as a way to get the additional multiplier damage from like Envenom, etc. So I can see this actually being quite good. Making it where it casts a landslide around you means it now we have this increased damage multiplier here from Earth skills, but we also have the bonus landslide damage as well. So this is going to fit very well I believe, into our Nature's Fury type of build. So I can see that actually being really good. And in this Nature's Fury build, you don't even need Landslide really on your bar because you're not using any of the Spirit. And I have a video talking about that Nature's Fury build that you can look at if you want. But basically, this is going to fit in very well into that build there. So Necromancer here, Gore Quills. Blood Lance will consume blood orbs to also conjure lances from them. Oh, each edition of Blood Lance deals 20 to 50% normal damage and prioritizes targeting unlanced enemies. Well, I like that a lot. Okay, so far Druid and Necromancer have some really interesting ones. I like to see stuff that's built around the blood. I like to see stuff that's built around the poison, built with the unique as well as this. These are cool changes or additions for the Druid and Necromancer. I actually like that a lot. Okay, let's move on to the Rogue. Every third cast of Puncture is poison imbued with 100 to 150% normal potency. That is really good also, because if that triggers the poison imbuement puddle, where it counts as poison imbuement, you hit them and then you get the crit and you get the poison puddle, that makes your poison imbuement easier to continue the proc. So that's actually really good. I believe that actually looks really good. And then Sorcerer here, after spending 200 to 100 mana, your next Firewall is free to cast and would destroy incoming small missiles. That seems really good too. I actually really like the Firewall build, and I kind of was wishing it was better. So that seems, man, I really like that. Okay, you know what? I feel like these unique and legendary aspects were kind of big W's. I'm going to be honest. They seem like kind of big W's. I like those. Okay, let's continue here. Bug fixes. So they made various improvements from accessibility perspective. So let's kind of skip through these bug fixes here. Multiple issues where the challenge wouldn't provide proper stuff. I'll let you guys read. If you want to read all the bug fixes, you can. This is going from basically it's unintended to what it was intended to do. So unless there's something really major here, I'm not going to poke through pages and pages and pages here of all of these bug fixes. But let's move on and see what else we have in the patch, because this is a whole bunch of bug fixes. Still a lot of bug fixes. We're still going into bug fixes. Fix. Okay. Move on from the bug fixes. Loading screen updates, more dynamic loading screens. So we're going to see some more there. On to what everyone wants to see. Gameplay updates. Jimro, Altar of Lilith unlocks are now account-wide. Thank you, Jesus. Please tell me that softcore counts for hardcore, because I did not want to go collect all the Altars of Lilith again for the hardcore. Map discovery is now account-wide. Thank you very much. And the reason I say I hope this is softcore goes to hardcore, but it's because softcore already went to softcore. So if they're saying it's account-wide, I'm assuming they mean all of the account. Okay, same with map discovery. That is a big W. You get the altars, you get the map discovery, all of it, okay, for all characters. That would be great. Whispers no longer rewards sigil dust. Sure. Overall, loot quality has been significantly improved for silent chests. So these are the chests that you need the key for that you get from the oboe trader. Okay, these are obviously a problem and needed to be changed. So big W that they're actually buffing those, because they're very disappointing. Channel time for leave dungeon has been increased from 3 to 5 seconds. Okay, I'm not really sure why. It doesn't matter much when you're running Nightmare Dungeons over and over again. You can just use another sigil and it will kick you out immediately anyway, so that part doesn't matter. We have generally reduced the tendency for mini monsters to move around in combat so that melee characters don't have to chase their enemies down as much. So they're locking them a little bit more. So I'll be honest, I never really felt like enemies ran too much, but so be it. I guess that's quality of life for melee, which is something that people have complained about. PS5 DualSense Edge wireless controller support for PC. Okay, so now you can use the PS5 one. Here we go. World Tier 2 is the following bonuses added. Bonus gold from 15 to 20%, and monsters now drop 15% more items. So here's the reason they're doing that. World Tier 1 seems to be like factually what people said to start on in the beginning, and I believe they're doing this because they don't want everyone to do World Tier 1 then skip to 3, because World Tier 1 is like faster experience because you can kill things faster than you can kill it in 2, so you don't really care about the bonus experience, and there wasn't an increase in drop rates anyway, so people didn't care, and you just did World Tier 1. This makes sense because now we actually have sort of a reason to do it. Leveling, scaling inside dungeons in most overworld territories have been adjusted in 3 and 4. Monsters will now begin to trail behind the player in level after a certain point, up to 5 levels behind. This change does not affect world bosses, Legion events, Fields of Hatred, Helltide, or Nightmare Dungeons. So this is sort of a change from the pushback of dynamic scaling seeming to be bad. Basically, as you leveled, it would make it feel frustrating that the enemies leveled with you. The Actman made some pretty good points about this one in his dynamic scaling video that you might have seen. So this is actually an answer to that, okay? They say here they want to give players a better sense of their power progression and mastery over the world while still challenging themselves with structured in-game activities. So it seems like Blizzard wants to answer that a little bit. World Tier 3 example, if the player is level below 55, the monster is 55. If the player is 56 to 60, the monster's level is 55. If there's 61, it's 56. If there's 62, it's 57. So basically from you have 5-level gap there that they're going to trail behind you by about 5 levels. From this point, the monsters will always be -5 into World Tier 3 max monster level of 70. So now we have max monster level 70, World Tier 3, -5 is below. Okay, sort of makes sense. That way you can feel stronger. If a player's level is below 75, this is for 4, the monster's level is 75. If they're 76 to 80, it's 75. If they're 81, it's 76 and what have you. And this point, the monster will always be -5, meaning 95, and then the +5 levels at the end actually matter. Interesting change. I'll be honest, I didn't see this change coming at all. Did not expect that. I think this will be probably very well received because the dynamic scaling is something that people have complained about, and this is a direct addressing of that issue. Let's see here. Experience. Reward experience for completing Whispers in World Tier 3 and 4 has been significantly increased. This was much needed. The Whispers did not feel good. The Tree of Whispers did not feel good. They said they've observed the experience bonus reward for killing higher level monsters escalates too fast when compared to the relative challenge involved. We still want to reward players for taking on this challenge by encouraging them to participate in power leveling together instead of one player killing enemies while another member of their party walks at the dungeon's entrance. Yeah. Right, so they don't want power leveling, basically. So they're adjusting the bonus experience rewards for killing monsters that are higher level. So the preseason bonuses, 1 higher is 15, 2 higher is 20, 3 levels is 25. The postseason is going to be 1.5 bonus experience per level up to 10 levels. So at +1 level, 1.5, 2 levels, 3%, 10 levels, 15%. So this is a nerf to the bonus experience for fighting things that are way higher level than you. That way you, aka, can't get power level this much, I believe is what this is doing. They're adjusting experience rewards for monster levels to offset for higher world tier rewards. So current world tier level offsets, 2 is, let's see, how does this work? Adjusting experience rewards for monster level offsets for higher tier. So the current world tier level offsets at world tier 2 up to +3. 3 is +10. World tier 4 +100. For monster level offsets for higher tier. Okay, so what are they actually saying here? Adjusting experience rewards for monster level offsets for higher tier. So the current world tier is 3, 10, 100, and they're changing this to 3, 6, and 10, which I'm assuming what they mean. Let's just look at the example because my brain is not accessing this. You are level 1, your friend brings you the world tier 4 and leaves you at the entrance. They start killing 100 monsters. Prior to that, you would get level 100 monster XP +1 +25 or ×1 +25%. After season 1, you will get level 11 monster experience times. I get it. Okay. All right. I get it. So you cannot. Basically, what this used to mean is you would get the bonuses as if it's a 100 prior, but now you only get the bonus as if it's 10 levels higher. So if they kill 100 monster, then you only get if you're level 1 as if it's level 11 monster. So my brain was slow, but basically they're capping, again, this is all boosting stuff. They basically don't want your level 100 person to boost people through early. That's what I'm seeing. And it looks like they're buffing the experience reward for Whispers as a try the way to like, hey, do this. Like actually go play the game instead of just getting boosted. That's sort of what they're doing here. Okay, I get it now. Helltides. We're looking to increase the danger of Helltide's risk-reward gameplay by making the monsters a bit more challenging and the torture gift of mysteries harder to open. So Helltide monsters are now 3 levels higher than the player instead of 2. Okay, not a big deal. The torture gift mysteries cost has increased to 250 from 175, and all interactable objects in Helltide now have a small chance of dropping cinders. This would have been fine with me if the torture gift of mysteries has had a buff in terms of reward, because they're increasing the risk reward gameplay, but they're only increasing the risk. So it's harder to do Helltides, and now you factually get a little bit less overall rewards because it's going to take longer to get the cinders. So this is actually a nerf, unless we're saying that the interactable objects like stuff you destroy can give you cinders, unless these really increase, which I don't see it really increasing because you're trying to do things that give you the souls anyway. So this looks like a nerf to Helltides to me. So moving on to balance updates. Okay, now we get into the real meat and bones of it. Let's read the developer notes here, zoom out a little bit just so we can read this a little better. As our community continues to battle the burning hells, The builds emerging from new players have shocked and delighted us. We've chosen to focus on the season Malignant balance updates on clear itemization disparities over redesigns of class features. The class changes are largely focused on numeric increases to skill upgrades and legendary aspects that players haven't found yet compelling. So they're saying they're buffing rather than nerfing. Additionally, we're changing critical strike damage paragon glyphs to empower all damage instead of only core skills. Okay, so the core skill bonus ones now work on all skills, I think, to enable more build strategies. Okay, that's a W. There's also a few class stat decreases on sources which grant extreme amounts of damage, healing, or unstoppable. In general, we prefer build-specific changes to bonuses instead of decreases, but we feel these changes are necessary for the overall health of the game. So basically what they're saying is we're mostly focused on buffing instead of nerfing, but there are a few outlier anomalies that we're going to change. Other than that, we're trying to focus things less around just core skills, more around all the abilities in general, and now we can sort of see how they represent that with their changes. So let's go ahead and look here at Barbarian. Violent double swing vulnerable duration increased, so that's a buff to that. Furious upheaval damage bonus stack increased from 3 to 5%, so these are just buffs so far. Power charge cooldown reduction is now capped at 3 targets for a maximum of 9 seconds of cooldown reduction. Tactical ground stomp fury gain increased from 25 to 40, so these are mostly buffs. Enhanced death blows damage bonus to bosses increased from 100 to 150. That's a big bonus. Steel grasp vulnerable duration increased. Rupture damage increased. Warriors rupture attack speed increased and duration increased. Rupture's healing increased. Okay, so these are... Barbarian got a bunch of buffs, basically. Nerf Barbarian, not entirely this time. Let's go to the passives here. Hamstring now only slows healthy enemies, and the slow amount is increased. Okay. Cut to the bone, bleeding damage bonus to vulnerable reduced from 6, 12, 18 to 5, 10, 15. Okay, there's the nerf. Paragon, so Barb's nerf GG. Just kidding. I mean, the other ones are buffs, but bleed damage bonus reduced there. Let's see here. Wrath's glyph bonus now affects all damage instead of just core skills. So that's the Paragon change they're talking about. That will be good. Aspects here. Relentless Berserker's duration increased. Okay, another buff. Duration increased on aspect of Berserking. Brawler's aspect damage increased. Aspect of Burning Rage damage increased. Aspect of the Iron Warrior damage reduction increased. So these are all buffs. Aspect Lucky Hit chance increased. Aspect of Ancestral Echo's lucky hit chance increased. Weapon Master's aspect lucky hit chance increased. These are all buffs. And then the Devastating Grips now explode every 2 seconds, and its hit cap has been removed. And then the Fields of Crimson Bleeding damage bonus increased from 10 to 15%. So these are mostly buffs. There's only what? This one, I think, was the only nerf, unless I'm reading how this ability works wrong. But these seem like all buffs to the Barbarian as far as I can tell. Now we're going to get on to Druid, something that I know a little bit better and I'm a fan of here. So the enhanced claw attack speed bonus increased. Oh, that's actually nice because people are using the double attack. Storm spike damage reduction reduced from 25 to 15. That kind of makes sense because people are double tapping it with like Crone Staff, etc. And that damage reduction is pretty crazy. Bolder damage increased. Nice, because this can actually be maybe core skill with one of the offensive aspects and no one does it. So I actually kind of like that they're trying to make Boulder a thing. Savage Trample Spirit gain increased from 20 to 40. Okay, I feel like most Trample doesn't use Spirit, but it's nice that they have this. I guess this will help somewhat with Pulverize, and we do want to have Spirit gain continue to come into the Druid, so not complaining there. Prime Lacerate healing increased. Okay, minor buff. Cataclysm lightning damage increased and tornado damage increase as well. Okay, that's because people are mostly using like Petrify or Grizzly Rage. Petrify, the bonus your other moves, which is where your real damage comes in, so people aren't really caring about like the Cataclysm type of damage. I like to see that buffed, makes it a little bit more viable. Supreme Cataclysm vulnerable duration increased from 2 to 3. That's a nice buff. Prime Cataclysm duration increased. Nice. Prime Grizzly Rage now grants Unstoppable for 6 seconds instead of while being active. So that is interesting because I think they're trying to stop the 100% uptime stuff from Grizzly Rage Unstoppable. So that's a bit of a hard-hitting nerf there to Unstoppable from the way I'm reading that. So Provocation threshold required for guaranteed overpower reduced. That's nice because overpower isn't really that OP. So increasing the frequency of overpower is a W. Spirit Boon here. Masochist now also requires a lucky hit chance of 75. Prickle Skin Thorns increased from 0.1 to 0.15. Iron Feather, maximum life increased. Boaster, Fortify increased. Overload, damage increased. So we have here basically buffs for the most part on these, okay? Paragon, Spirit Glyphs bonus now affects all damage instead of just core skills. Okay, so wait, hold on. Spirit Glyphs bonus damage now affects all damage instead of just core skills. Okay, so I don't think I actually use Spirit Glyph. I'd have to relook at my Paragon board, but this might actually change the usefulness of this for me. I like that they're moving away from just core skills on this, to be honest with you, because that was kind of an issue. Moving on to aspects here. Aspect of the Calm Breeze, lucky hit chance increased from 5 to 10 to 7 to 12. That's a small upgrade, but I'll take the 2%. Balanced aspect maximum spirit increased from 30-50 to 60-80. Okay. Aspect of the Tempest damage bonus increased from 7-15 to 10-18. All right. For some reason, I'm thinking like this doesn't do as much for me as I was hoping. As Skinwalker's aspect of healing increased, I don't really care about that one. Symbiotic aspect cooldown reduction from 4-8 to 3-5. That is not as, I mean, that right there, I believe that's your Nature's Fury passive one, that you want that 8-second cooldown. That's actually a pretty hard hitting the Nature's Fury, if I believe this is the one I'm thinking about. Aspect of the Stampede's damage bonus increased from 10 to 20 to 16 to 26. That's actually decent. 6% on the top end, but 6% also on the low end isn't too bad. And then Shepherd's damage bonus increased. I don't really care about Shepherd's damage. It's only 2% on the high end. I don't really care about that as much. Let's move on to the items here. Insatiable Fury, Werebear, skill ranks increased from 2 to 3. That's good because a lot of people aren't even using the chest plate because the chest plate isn't as viable as like a min-max normal chest plate. And it looks like they did the same thing to Mad Wolf's Glee. This is a smart change. I think they could have buffed this even a little bit more, maybe like 4. And the reason being is, like I say, the min-max level is people who actually don't use the chest plate, they use the other one. So these are mostly W's. There is some negative things here. Grizzly Rage loses Unstoppable, hits pretty hard, to be honest. Symbiotics aspect cooldown reduction reduced from 4 to 8 to 3 to 5 is a pretty hard hitting one too. So there's a couple there that they are nerfing for like primary builds. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how that plays out, but that seems like mostly buffs with some targeted nerfs basically on things. They're trying to bring some of the other moves into line there. So going forward here into the Necromancer now, this is the class I've been playing more so recently. Decompose. So I expect to see Bone Spear gutted, and I expect to see buffs to the other skills in order to make it more viable. So initiate, Decompose slow increased. That doesn't matter that much. Paranormal Sever cast required for vulnerable reduced from 4 to 3. That's a decent buff. Enhanced Blood Surge healing increased from 2.5 to 3% is okay. I don't know how much I care about that too much, but that's all right. Blood Lance damage reduction for piercing reduced from 15 to 10. So that's actually a nerf there. Bone Prison's initial essence increased from 15 to 25. That's all right. Some people are using Bone Prison. I don't like Bone Prison, but some people are using it. Maybe this will help early game essence increase here. And then Abhorrent Iron Maiden's healing increased from 5 to 7%. I have a hard time caring about that. I'll be honest. The healing doesn't matter as much to me. Golems move faster and unhindered through enemies when their cooldown is activated. That's actually nice because I think Golem continually getting buffed would be nice to see because I think Golem is expensive to use, but also quite interesting. Being able to move faster and unhindered will be nice if you're going to try to do the minion build. And also now that you can kind of control these minions through things like curses from the previous patch, I think that that's a smart change. A Supreme Blood Wave leaves behind blood orbs earlier in its path. So anything that's going to leave behind more blood orbs is going to work pretty good with that new Necromancer item that we saw, the aspect, which makes Blood Lance like go off of the blood orbs. So we want to see the blood orbs pop up as much as possible. And then here we go. Raised Skeleton, Corpse Explosion, and Corpse Tendrils range for auto-targeting corpses on mouse and keyboard increased by 50%. So now it's easier to actually land those because before you'd have to kind of like point and make sure you're really on it. That's a nice W in terms of quality of life. Raised Skeleton Priest damage bonus increased from 20 to 30%. Nice. Raised Skeletal Priest healing increased 10 to 15. Nice. So these are buffs. to the minion build, essentially. These are smaller buffs, but buffs nonetheless to the minion build. You love to see that here. Evosion bonus damage to vulnerable reduced. Okay, so this is one of your Bone Spear builds one. You would get Evosion on the necklace. That's what I have on my necklace. And reduced from 612 to 18 to 510, 15. So not a massive change, but 3% on the high end there. Transfusion minion healing increased. Okay, so that once again, another buff here to the minion healing. Drain vitality lucky hit chance increased from 25 to 30%, and then amplify damage increased as well. So they want curses to be better for bursting damage. So this means that Bone Spear, while getting nerfed from the Evosion, which is actually pretty brutal to the vulnerable damage, your amplified damage is a little bit better. So if you do the Tindrow's pull into the amplified damage, some of that damage you lost will come back on the amplified damage here. So Book of the Dead, here we have focus more on the minions. Necromancer's minions will now automatically resummon after respawning during a world boss fight. That is a huge W because they would get one shot on bosses, and then creating corpses is an issue. You would have to just sit there and have the passive that chips them off due to the lucky hit chance, and that's something we could get back up. So this is a huge buff to boss fight for world bosses. I would like to see this change for all bosses, I'll be honest. Like Uber Lilith, this would make it a lot better. Skeleton Warriors defend, upgrade Thorns inherited from 40 to 50%. So this is a buff to the Thorn build for minions. Shadow Skeleton Mage upgrade attacks required for the additional Shadow from 5 to 4. So another buff on the minions. Bone Skeleton Mage upgrade Fortify increased from 11 to 20%. That's a huge buff on the Fortify amount. And then the Iron Golems upgrade attack slam from 5 to 4. So these are like 20% buffs basically across the board. For most of the things listed here. That's actually a pretty decent buff if you're trying to do the minion min-maxing thing. Okay, so not too bad there. Moving on here to Essence Glyph bonus now affects all damage instead of just corpse. So this is they're keeping this in line with basically all of the other ones we've already seen mentioned. And then the aspects here, okay. Here we go. We're going to see how hard we're going to get reduced. Bone Spear about to get gutted. Splintering Aspect Bone Shard reduced from 50 to 100 to 30 to 60. Insane. That's actually a massive nerf. Aspects of Plunging Darkness bonus damage increased from 50 to 100% to 71. So they are desperately trying to move the power around on the Necromancer. Codebringer's Aspect Blizzard cooldown reduction from 10 to 8. That's okay, I guess. I'm not really too worried about that. Aspect of a Hungry Blood chance to fire Blood Lance increased from 1020 to 1323. Yeah, they're trying to move the power of the blood and shadow, which is fine with me because I actually think those builds would be more enjoyable in the long run than just spamming the Bone Spear over and over again. I expected they were going to nerf the Bone Spear. I'm kind of okay with it. Blood-soaked aspect damage increase from... Okay, how big of a... That's actually a pretty decent buff, right? The blood-soaked aspect damage, that's like, what, 40% buff? That's fairly large. Aspect of the ultimate shadow damage increase as well, which is more than double. So another big buff there. Aspect of Grasping Veins critical strike damage reduced from 3060 to 2040. That is the Tindrow Poland that people would put on the necklace. That is another huge nerf. So that is your bonus damage and your nuking damage for things like bosses. Those are really big nerfs there. Osseous Gale aspect for Bone Storm duration increase from 4 to 8 to 5 to 10. That will be nice paired with the other Bone Storm duration or Storm spawner new aspect that comes in. So they're trying to make the Bone Storm actually do something, which is kind of cool. Aspect of the Damn damage bonus from 40 to 40 to 50. Another about 20% buff there. Bloodbath aspect of the Echo damage reduction reduced from 70-60 to 60-50. Okay, sure. Didn't see that one coming, but sure, that seems like a mild reduction, though. Aspect of the Reanimation Skeleton damage bonus increase from 20-30 to 30-40. So again, another buff to minions. And then we have the items here. Bloodless Scream Essence gained from 2.5 to 710. That's a big change. And then the Deathless Visage damage increased. So they're trying to make the helmet for Bone Spear better to compromise for the fact that Bone Spear basically got gutted. That's a pretty hard-hitting Necromancer buff for Bone Spear. I don't think that's a big deal. Bone Spear is a little ridiculous. I do like to see that they're buffing the other things like blood type of stuff, and I really like to see all of these changes for the Necromancer minions. If you are a Necromancer minion fan, you're probably going to be happy about these changes. Okay, so we're moving on to the Rogue here. Advanced Rapid Fire duration increased, 3 to 5. Caltrop cast speed increased. Code Imbue Lucky Hit chance increased. Okay, nice. Nice to see Code Imbue get some love. Enhanced Smoke Grenade bonus damage increase. So they're buffing the stuff that people don't really use that much. Although, to be fair, Rapid Fire is quite good. Methodical dash maximum cooldown reduction increased from 3 to 4. Concealment duration increased from 4 to 5. These are just buffs across the board. Enhanced Dark Shroud's chance to not be consumed from 10 to 14. And the Supreme Death Trap cooldown from 10 to 12. So the Supreme Death Trap cooldown reduction increased from 10 to 12, actually, not just the cooldown. So these are all buffs. These are buffs across the board as far as the skills go. Let's look at the passives here. Victimized Lucky Hit Chance increased, another buff. Siphoning Strike requires a lucky hit chance of 75%. Okay. Rugged damage reduction against damage over time increased, another buff. Mending Obscurity healing per second while stealth increased. Oh. Okay, you know what? Maybe stealth for you use stealth to like regenerate yourself is a little bit better. Now, Aftermath Energy Restored increases. So these are more buffs. These are more buffs as well. So there's a lot of buffs coming through here. Paragon Combat Glyphs now is all instead of his core skills. And then the Eldritch Bounty Legendary Node increased from 6 to 9 seconds. Man, we're getting these are more buffs than I was expecting here. Okay, Specialization, Preparation's ultimate cooldown reduction increased from 4 to 5. That's the ultimate cooldown reduction increased from 4 to 5. So 25% buff there on that. Legendary Aspects, now the important part. Volatile Shadow damage increased. The Icy Alchemist Chill increased. Shadow Slicer Aspect increased. Toxic, oh my god, these are all buffs. Damage increased for the Alchemist. Vengeful Aspect lucky hit chance increased. Imitated, good lord, couldn't get that one out. Imbuement's duration increased. Stolen Vigor healing increased. Lethal Dusk life of kill duration increased. Noxic Ice bonus damage increased. And Elusive Menace dodge chance increased. These are all buffs. I'm not seeing Rogue really take any L's here. And I think Rogue was already going to be a class people wanted to play. These seem quite good. Sky Hunter's energy gain increase and Grasp of Shadow lucky hit chance increase. These are I wouldn't say like significant massive buffs, but these are all small, 20% buffs or something, kind of just across the board. Mostly, Necromancer is the one that's been hit the hardest. Druid and Necromancer have had adjustments, I think, that were either fair, or the Druid one got kind of gutted with the Unstoppable. But this is actually just all good news to see. If you're a Rogue player, you love to see that. Basically, a big variety of things just got about 20% buffs across the board as far as I can tell there. I need to play Rogue more to know what I'm talking about more on that one, but that seems like mostly buffs. Let's look here at Sorcerer. Now, Sorcerer for me feels painful. I actually don't like Sorcerer at all, and it's the class I'm trying to play for hardcore right now, so I would love to see some buffs to Lightning and Fire. Enhanced Charge Bolt damage increased and now benefits from skill ranks. Love to see that, okay? I think that is a good addition. Destructive Charge Bolt damage reduction increased. Like to see that. Destructive Incinerate damage reduction increase. Incinerate needs to be amazing, in my opinion. It's a flamethrower. It should be like a staple skill. No one uses it, so I like to see buffs for that. Ice Blade's cast cleanup has been tightened, allowing players to act after it's cast sooner. So they made it almost like an attack speed buff. They made it cleaner in order to actually get the Ice Blades out. Firebolt's initial damage increased. People use the Firebolt enchantment, but the initial damage, which is the cast of it, got increased. Wizard's Firewall maximum increased mana regeneration from 25 to 35%. Okay, so this is effectively, when you use the Firewall, you stand in this guy, you get your mana regeneration increase. They're buffing this basically. The Wizard's Blizzard core skill mana cost reduction from 10 to 20%, and then Supreme Deep Freeze cooldown reduction from 50 to 100%. Wow, that is a massive buff on that. Okay, wow, interesting. So with that being said, I like to see the buffs to charge boats, because I feel like people don't use charge boats that much. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't really use it, and I didn't really like using it. I tried using it, and it was annoying, so I like to see buffs to that. I like to see buffs to Incinerate. I like to see buffs to Firewall. Let's continue the passives. Elemental Dominance now also has mastery skills instead of just core skills. Lovely. They're getting away from the core skills. Can actually move the build around a little bit. Potent Warding duration increased from 3 to 9 seconds. That's a massive buff to that. Protection Barrier duration increased from 2 to 3 seconds. The Align the Elements damage reduction per second increased from 123 to 369. Wow, okay, that's a big damage reduction increase. So they're helping out this survivability. What I'm seeing here is they are helping out survivability, which is a big W, because that's what Sorcerer needs. Mana Shield damage reduction increased from 5, 10, 15 to 7, 14, 21. Yeah, they're really doubling down on survivability for this. Devouring Blaze critical strike damage reduced from 10 20, 30, 7, 14, 21. So that's kind of a correct change. The only reason I say that is because everyone uses this plus the Firebolt enchantment just to make people burn just so you can get this bonus damage because it seems mandatory. This might piss a lot of people off because this is pretty much a move that is, how to say, fairly staple. So this is going to be a nerf to basically all of the builds because you want to have people burn or they have the bonus damage. Bonus critical strike damage to immobilize reduced from 25, 50, 75 to 10, 20, 30. So they're just trying to get away from like you're stuck behind the burning, basically. Fiery Surge mana regeneration increased. So they buffed the defensives and they nerfed a little bit of this one that kind of pigeonholes you into the fire-based damage. And let's see what else they do. Destruction Glyphs now affects all instead of core, so they changed that like they did with the other ones. And then enhancements. Here we go. Spark enhancement chance to form the cackling energy from 10 to 14. You love to see that. Frozen Orb enchantments being increased from 20 to 30. That's good, because Frozen Orb's enchantment for me was actually really fun, but it just never happened, so I love to see that. Incinerate enchantment cooldown from 18 to 14 seconds, and then the Hydra enchantment threshold from 300 to 200. So these are basically all buffs. All buffs to the enchantment, which in my opinion are W's because the enchantments feel a little feels bad. You kind of have the Flame Shield one if you're hardcore, and then Firebolt just to get the burning for the Devouring Blaze. So because this got nerfed and they buffed the other ones, we'll probably see a little bit of shake up in terms of enchantments. Moving on to legendary aspects. Aspect of efficiency, mana cost reduction increase, and now also affects mastery skills, big buff. Armageddon damage increase, Shattered Stars damage increase. So we're just going to go down the list here. These are buffs here. Hydra duration reduction reduced from 30/20 to 20/10. Okay, so that's actually a buff because of the Hydra aspect. The way it works is it reduces how long it's up, but then you can do the double of them, right? So that's a buff. Glacial aspect, Ice Spike bonus damage from Frozen from 25 to 15. So that's actually a reduction there. Ice Spike damage increased, however. So, okay, so you get a bonus damage reduction, but the standard damage increased. So that means it's more reliable in terms of the Ice Spike damage and less requiring to be focused on Frozen, I think is the way I'm reading that. Frozen Tundra Ice Spike damage increased. Frozen Wake Ice Spike damage increased, and Chill increased. Biting Code chance to vulnerable the frozen enemies from 25, 35 to 30, 40. So that's actually a buff to the vulnerability application, which is good because the only way we really have that at the moment is the Frost Nova. Encased aspect of life and mana restore per seconds increased from 10 to 20 to 20 to 30. Stable aspect chance for a free cast from 5, 10 to 7, 12. I like that because I actually really like this aspect. I don't know if it's meta or not, but I actually like this aspect. Aspect of Splintering Energy, chance to spawn additional Lightning Spear increased from 1120 to 4150. That is a smart change because the additional Lightning Spear is like, who cares? So getting that to where it's actually an amount to be somewhat reliable is good. Aspect of the Unbroken Tether, chance to spawn an additional Chain Lightning increased from 25, 35. Same logic with that, smaller buff, but same logic. And then the items here, Gloves of the Illuminator, Fireball damage reduction reduced from 65, 75 to 55, 65. The Heirloom Critical Strike chance for move speed increased, and then the Overflowing Cameo chance to release a Lightning Nova increased as well. So a little bit of a nerf and a little bit of a buff, not massive changes on these. Okay, interesting. So let's do a quick takeaway on the classes. Basically buffs for everybody. Druid and Necromancer got a little bit of reduction to like their absolute peak builds, which makes sense. And then Sorcerer got some damage moved away from the Devouring Blaze, and they buffed the damage reduction, basically is what it looks like. So now we move into more of the Jimro ones here. Aspect of the Disobedience, maximum stacks reduced from 100 to 60. So that's a really big nerf to survivability on all classes, because this is actually the meta. You use this at 50%. You put these on pants, basically, and that is your tanky pants. So that's actually a pretty big nerf. Aspect of Retribution, which probably makes total armor percentage rose better now because you're going to need that. Aspect of Retribution, bonus damage to stunned, reduced from 2040 to 1020. Okay, that's not a big deal. I don't think that's a big deal. Maybe this is something that was used on stagger builds, but not really that concerned about that. Exploiter's aspect, damage to Unstoppable, reduced. So that's what these are about. And then Starlight aspect, restore, increase from 1020 to 2040. You like to see the Essence restores getting a little bit of a buff there. So the items, the Jimro items getting changed. They mentioned the Butcher's Cleaver first one, which I think Butcher's Cleaver is kind of disappointing. So interested to see here. The slow increase from 4075 to 6175. So it's a major slow now. Drop rate adjustments. Increased bonus to drop Ancestral and Sacred Gear and Nightmare Dungeons from +5 to +10. Remove 20% chance to drop extra equipment item from elite monsters outside of the Nightmare Dungeons and Hell Tides. So this is a nerf to outside equipment drop rate and a buff basically to inside of these. They want to push you into Nightmare Dungeons more, and they want to push you the Hell Tides more. Increased chance to drop extra equipment from elite monsters in Nightmare Dungeons and Hell Tide by 10%. Again, doubling down on that philosophy. Dungeons have a 50% chance to drop a second legendary item upon completion. That is actually quite good because a lot of the times you're going to get unique items that happen at the end there. So this gives you an opportunity to get another roll of that slot. That's pretty good. Nightmare Dungeons now give 3 rare items upon completion, up from 1. So this is a buff to Nightmare Dungeons, a minor nerf from outside of Nightmare Dungeons and Hell Tides, but a buff to Nightmare Dungeons significantly in terms of loot. Increase monster HP scaling from 85 to 100% bonus per extra player in the party. So that's a nerf to clear speeds of party play. Okay, miscellaneous, adjusted the scaling of Greed Shrine to improve its effectiveness throughout the game. You know, honestly, you can just remove this one from the game. Just, unless this thing's now dropping 1 million gold, I actually don't care. World bosses now drop potions more often. Cool. No, not a big deal, but cool. It helps for hardcore. There's no longer a limit to how many materials you can refine into higher materials at once. That's a nice addition. And then moving on to item affixes here. Many item affixes are too efficient and outshining alternatives. We're looking to refine the others, improving the number of meaningful choices on our competitive slot. So these are the stats your items come with here. We know these changes will reduce the total amount of possible power a character can possess, so we'll be monitoring how these changes affect players' ability to conquer expected milestones throughout the season. We're increasing the availability of affixes to allow them easier to include in different builds. So controlled impaired duration reduction can now appear on pants, which is... I don't know if I like that because I like damage reduction being easier to roll. Barrier generation can now appear for all classes and begins dropping later in the game. Okay, so barrier generation will be good in some builds that use barrier, but I'm thinking this more is scaling with things like Bulwark, which is basically bugged. Lucky hit chance while you have a barrier can now appear for all classes, reduced by 12% when on helmet and 20% when on amulet or offhand. Okay, so these are now for everyone. So I guess you can use the barrier. They're trying to make barrier more of a thing for people, I suppose. Mastery skill damage, newly added, can appear on sorcerer weapons. Scales identically to core skill damage. So that is mastery skill damage. I'm assuming that is for basically all skills, which is the same as core skill damage. And they're trying, if this can appear on sorcerers, they're trying to make the non-sorcerer core skills even better as a way to make the casting fantasy of sorcerers better. That's actually kind of a smart change. I see where they're going with that. They're trying to make it where it's like you use offensive shit and you get rewarded for it instead of you just have to do 4 defensive things that don't do any damage. Resistance to elements can now appear on shields, so that will be even better once they fix resistances. And then look at this, strength, 50% stronger when on weapons, 25, let's see here, core step weapons has been overwhelming, so we're pulling it back on this. So, okay, so strength, dexterity, intelligence with willpower. For instance, like the best in slot stat for like a necromancer on a weapon is 189 intelligence. So what this actually means is they are reducing how viable the raw stats are for your main skill damage modifier. Not the modifier in particular, but how many of these raw stats you're going to have so that you don't just go instantly for that main stat here. They say it's overperforming. That's interesting. I kind of didn't see that nerf coming. I thought it was just like kind of a thing where it's like, okay, well, you build your skill damage, you get more damage, but so be it. Cooldown reduction affixes often felt mandatory due to their raw power. We imagine cooldown reduction will remain a highly desirable stat, but the penalty for not prioritizing won't be as harsh. So cooldown reduction reduced by 30%. I don't know if that really makes... I don't think that makes other things better. That just makes cooldown worse. So they're basically nerfing cooldown reduction. Imbuement school cooldown reduction reduced 30. So it's just 30% across the board for cooldown reduction. Okay. I don't really feel like cooldown reduction is something that felt bad. It didn't feel like, oh, mandatory, I have to have it or else, my character is just bad. I mean, I guess on some of the builds for like Grizzly's Rage, for instance, it is. But I don't know. The cooldown reduction, I felt like it felt good to build. It didn't feel bad to build. That's how I felt. It's like, oh, cool, I have cooldown reduction. Now my moves are up more often. But so be it. Moving on here. We're seeing critical strike damage and vulnerable damage often viewed as a hard requirement for build success. That's probably fair. We believe this is a step towards allowing more builds to flourish, and we'll continue to make changes and support this goal. So critical strike damage reduced by 17%. Lightning critical strike 17. Critical strike with bone skilled Earth Imbue, the werewolf skill is reduced by 17%, and then vulnerable damage reduced by 40%. So these are nerfs to vulnerable and critical strike damage, which only really means that that's an overall nerf to damage, because if you're not replacing it, we're going to have to see if they decide to buff other things. But if you nerfed core stats, if you nerfed critical strike damage, if you nerf vulnerable damage, then everyone's just going to do less fucking damage. That's all that means. So let's continue and see how this goes. I guess there was buffs to characters that increase their damage stats, etc. So maybe they're hoping the skill class balance changes will balance out some of these, but this just kind of seems like a nerfs across the board. Cooldown reduction reduced by 35%, critical strike damage 50%, vulnerable damage and crossbows 65%. These are really big. These are very big damage and stat reductions on items here. Damage bonus to crowd-controlled enemies was overperforming, so more damage reduction nerfs here, but damage to frozen enemies increased. So freeze is now better, but the crowd-controlled enemies is decreased. And I guess crowd-controlled enemies also include slow. Maybe it was too easy to do here. So let's see where. Remember, we're getting into some buffs here. We've seen skillful players are frequently slaughtering monsters many levels above their own. We want to support this, but the current situation beyond is what we believe is correct for the long-term health of the game. To chase this goal, we're shifting power to many offensive affixes from defensive affixes. We know this will make our in-game content more deadly, particularly for chasing our pinnacle boss. An encounter is not meant for the faint of heart. Overcoming the pinnacle boss will take every ounce of grit you can muster and all tools at your disposal. We continue to evaluate feedback from the community and make changes. So here's where the buffs come in. Physical damage increased 25%. Fire, so fire, cold, lightning, poison, shadow, non-physical, all 25%. Physical over time, fire over time, shadow over time, 40%. So dots get a bigger buff. Damage with two-handed, slashing, dual, ranged, skills that swap, human form, shape-shifted, blood skill, bone skill, conjuration, companion, darkness, cutthroat, frost, marksman, imbuement. All the huge 25% buffs across the board. Traps, weapon mastery, 33%. Werebear skill, werewolf skill, 25%. Total armor reduced by 30%. So that's a reduction. They're doing defensive nerfs on total armor there. Armor got hit hard between disobedience and total armor reduced by 30%. That's actually that's a pretty big gut there. Attack speed increased after dodging. Damage for after dodging increased. Total armor wear and werebear reduced. Total armor and werewolf reduced. Damage reduction from close, distant, bleeding, poison. So you are going to be, and fortified, you're going to be way more squishy now. They reduced a lot of the major damage, and they reduced a lot of the damage reduction. They buffed the classes, but I'm going to be honest, boys. This is a lot of nerfs. I didn't see this back half coming. This is a lot of nerfs. We're going to have to see how this actually balances out when it comes to numbers, but I would expect, after seeing this patch, people are going to do less damage and be killed sooner. I think the game is trying to be more challenging. They looks like they're pushing back, I think, on a lot of the things people were complaining about, which is that the game seemed too easy in the campaign, dynamic scaling was too strong, and they kind of pushed back on both of these. This is going to make the game harder. Like, the damage reduction is not as good, the armor is not as good, the core damage stats, including primary stats on weapons, vulnerable, core skill damage, critical strike damage, those all got nerfed. There is buffs to all skills as opposed to just core. I think they're trying to move away from build one core skill up to do a billion damage and your other ones are literally garbage or just filler or utility for your core. And they're trying to get the bar to actually mean more. That's what I'm seeing from interpreting this patch. But I'll be real, boys. I didn't see a lot. I didn't see this back half coming. This is some major... we're already focusing on damage reduction so much because we're trying to survive, because it is difficult to survive in terms of pushing nightmare tiers, etc. This is going to make that more interesting, which means Season 1 is going to be more challenging, is the way I'm reading this. They made the game harder. Maybe not as much with the world tiers, because they're now going to be 5 levels below you, so the overworld, you'll feel stronger in the overworld. But in terms of pushing in-game content, this looks like they made it harder. At least that's the way I'm reading it, which means Season 1 is going to be quite interesting. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing or come by the live stream. The Act Man's actually supposed to come by the live stream today and chat about Diablo, and he might be interested in some of these changes, so that should be a fun conversation. I will see you there.